Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer summoned a meeting with moderate Democratic senators yesterday to discuss next steps on voting rights, according to a senior Democratic aide. Schumer strategized with the group, including Senators Angus King, Tim Kaine, and John Tester, to have what they called family discussions with members of the caucus about specific ways to, quote, restore the Senate and find a path forward on voting rights legislation given the resolute Republican obstruction. The group of senators, along with other key voting rights leaders, including Senators Klobuchar, Warnock, Padilla, and Merkley, is expected to continue conversations with their colleagues about the need to get voting rights legislation passed immediately. Now, this comes as advancement of voting rights legislation was once again blocked yesterday when the U.S. Senate voted 50-49 in favor of starting debate on the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, but fell short of the 60 votes needed under Senate filibuster rules. The gridlock on Capitol Hill fuels fresh calls for eliminating the filibuster or reforming it. Schumer hinted at as much on the Senate floor, saying, quote, just because Republicans will not join us doesn't mean Democrats will stop fighting. This is too important. We will continue to fight for voting rights and find an alternative path forward, even if it means going it alone. Meanwhile, Republican Senator and former presidential candidate Mitt Romney recently defended the filibuster in a Washington Post op-ed, writing, have Democrats thought through what it would mean for them for Trump to be entirely unrestrained, with the Democratic minority having no power whatsoever? If Democrats eliminate the filibuster now, they and the country may soon regret it very much. I mean, they might. There's certainly no doubt about that. So Tom Carper yesterday, in a pretty interesting development, because he's Delaware guy, but he's served in political office with Joe Biden for decades, said that he would support a voting rights exemption to the filibuster. Right now, we already have a kind of budget exemption from the filibuster. He's saying let's add voting rights to that. Now, Republicans could go in the opposite direction if they did that and pass their own kind of voting rights laws. Democrats have said, look, and Democrats who support the move say, look, Republicans are going to do whatever they want anyway. You really can't base your decision making on your ability to influence them. I don't know.
I mean, that's true in general, but the filibuster is a, I don't know, stickier kind of thing. It has stuck around. Republicans have been reluctant to touch it. We might disagree on this. I think Romney makes a good point, and it is hard. I think it's very hard to look at doing some permanent damage to it. Maybe the one-time exemption for voting rights makes sense, but any broader kind of destruction, you would regret it then when the other side did it, and then the other side. It seems like we could escalate in a very, very damaging direction.
And what is interesting is that McConnell does actually appear generally to be supportive of the filibuster.
Yes.
And you've got Mitt Romney, Lindsey Graham, people like that who might. So the idea that Republicans would definitely blow up the filibuster if they need to isn't necessarily the case. And that's partly because Mitch McConnell has no genuine legislative agenda.
The legislative agenda is thwarting legislation.
Yes, exactly.
And as a filibuster is a great tool for doing that.
So McConnell's actually cool with the filibuster in a lot of ways. He can get tax cuts through reconciliation. He can cut spending if he wants to, or increase spending for wherever he wants through reconciliation. And it's the social policy stuff that he's not a big fan of.
Right.
That he thinks hurts them come election time, that the filibuster stands in the way of. So for that reason, he's actually kind of comfy.
Right. I think Republican leadership likes having it in place, doesn't want to do anything.
Keep the crazies at bay.
Right. But realizes that they would have to respond in kind if there was depending on what the Democrats did.
Right. Because if there is no filibuster, then the anti-abortion crowd would be like, well, wait a minute.
National critical race theory ban.
Or national critical race theory ban. Like, wait, you only need 50 votes. You have 50 Republican senators. Yeah. We'll put your heads on a stake if you don't do this.
Yeah.
So, none of this is easy at this point.
Yeah.
We have new Hill-HarrisX data on voters' preferences on the Senate filibuster. Let's take a look at that.
The poll found 40% of voters want to keep the filibuster as is, while 60% said it should be reformed or eliminated. 38% want to reform it so that it is more difficult to use, and 22% want to eliminate it entirely. Just over half of Republican respondents want to keep the filibuster as is, while 70% of Democrats say they want it either reformed or eliminated. Now, these numbers are similar to data from March, where 43% of voters said the maneuver should be kept as is, while 57% said it should be reformed or eliminated, which I have to think this data reflects who's in charge. Of course, right now, eliminating it has greater appeal to Democrats than Republicans. Don't you think this would, if there's more, if the Republicans have pickup in the Senate, then it's going to be, the numbers would flip, or at least shift.
They would definitely move. There are some people who just in principle say, like, no, look, we're a democracy, like the majority rules. Once, if you can get a majority for your legislation, it ought to pass. There are some, and I think you see some of those people reflected in those numbers. But yes, once power shifts, people's attitude toward the filibuster shifts. One of the first stories that I wrote after Trump was elected was I went around the Senate asking Republicans, if they supported reforming the filibuster or keeping the filibuster. And I talked to Lindsey Graham, McCain, and a couple others who said, no, we absolutely need to keep the filibuster in place. I talked to enough that said, well, they don't have 50 votes to undo the filibuster, and I reported that, and liberals were very happy to hear that.
Yes.
Like, okay, whew. All right, okay. So, so at least there's still that there. So yes, there's always going to be bias around issues of process, and to me, you're almost kind of a weirdo if process is your main concern. Yeah. Rather than outcomes and policy.
Process is the main concern for weirdos. Yeah, right. I agree.
And some weirdos are, that's a good thing, because fundamentally you have to create a good democratic process if you want a stable.
And this is not necessarily, right, this was not, the founders did not intend for it to take 60 votes to pass legislation in the Senate. That was not something they wrote down. They did not want that. They did not think it was a good idea. It is a quirk of history that we have.
Right, and it's already gerrymandered to protect minority rights in the sense that minority has fewer people by the fact that Wyoming gets 2 senators, and South Dakota gets 2 senators.
That the founders did intend. Right. They did put in anti-majoritarian.
Right, but they didn't mean to also layer on top of that a second anti-majoritarian one.
No, they did not. Yeah. I always counsel, liberals to be a little bit like majorities don't always. There's a faith that some liberal activists, some people on the left have, that just get more people voting, get more people involved in the process. It will always go our way. More is better. Simple majority, we would win. We would clean house, and that's not always true. And there's a lot There's a lot of the reason we guard certain minority rights. There are certain things that are not up for a vote, not for a simple majority vote, not for a vote at all. The First Amendment, etc., because it's that important, and we should not forget that and move away from that. But it is an odd procedure.
Yeah, indeed. And we will have more Rising right after this.